The story begins with a man named Kanata, as he is suddenly stabbed by his stalker. He's unable to defend himself, and his stalker surrounds her blade with lightning as she delivers the finishing blow. He wakes up in a cave, where the goblin elder Gabu names him Ru and gives him something to eat. He realizes that he has been reborn as a goblin, so he cries because he isn't happy with his current form. 3 days later, his body matures as he realizes that goblins grow faster than humans, and Gabu gives the children food, but he explains that this is going to be the last time because they need to learn how to hunt. Ru leaves the cave, and he starts exploring the outside world, realizing that it's filled with strange creatures, so he thinks it's different from the world he used to live in. He meets a goblin named Kichi, and they decide to work together, so they start hunting for food, and they see a horned rabbit. Kichi chases after it, as Ru sets up an ambush, and kills it in one hit. Kichi is about to eat it for himself, but Ru beats him up, saying they're supposed to share. Ru takes the rabbit's horn, wondering if it will make a good weapon, but he suddenly sees a notification, so he becomes confused, wondering what just happened. They eat the rabbit, and they continue hunting together, using the same tactic to catch their prey. He takes another horn, and the same message appears, but he still doesn't understand what's happening. As they eat the rabbit, the system tells Ru that he has learned the escape ability, so he realizes that he still has his absorption ability from his past life. It's considered to be extremely rare, and it allows him to learn the abilities of the creature he consumes. He notes that he no longer has the other abilities from his past life, but he thinks absorption is all he needs because he can consume the monsters in the area to get stronger. They return to the cave, where they meet a girl named Mio, who thinks they're amazing because they were able to hunt horned rabbits. Ru thinks they're pathetic, but she reveals that they have killed goblins before, and she takes a liking to him. He invites her to join them for tomorrow's hunt, and she agrees to this, but the next day, it starts raining, so they decide to postpone the hunt. Ru enters their storage area, where he realizes that they have been using human girls to procreate, but he ignores them, and he takes an ore, using it to forge a weapon. Gabu approaches him, thinking he's going to level up faster than expected, but he doesn't understand, so Gabu tells him to tap his head. He follows Gabu's instructions, and he realizes that Gabu is level 86. He reveals that when goblins reach level 100, they evolve into hobgoblins, but few are capable of achieving this because they age faster than humans, so they end up dying before they reach that level. The next day, Ru's party goes on a hunt, and they're able to defeat monsters with their excellent teamwork. They start eating a snake, and Ru learns its abilities, thinking they're going to be useful. Kichi finds it delicious, and he wonders if they can eat the head, but Ru explains that it's poisonous, so they're going to die if they eat it. They continue hunting for days, and they eventually reach a cave, but a swarm of bats attack them. So Kichi uses his shield to defend, as Ru uses his Evil Eye skill, stunning the bats in an instant, and he uses this opportunity to slaughter them. Ru's party eats the bats, and he obtains a new set of abilities, but we see a group of hungry goblins watching them. One evening, we see the group surrounding him as he sleeps, but his search ability activates, allowing him to sense the danger. So he beats them up, but he accidentally stabs one of them, and he collapses because Ru's weapon is laced with poison. He explains that it was an accident, saying he still can't control his abilities, so they become frightened, and Mio realizes they tried to kill Ru, so she strangles one of them. We see an orc walking in the woods when Ru's party attacks him. Mio throws a stone, and it ends up breaking his finger as Kichi crushes his leg, causing him to fall. Ru finishes him off, and they eat his body, as Ru obtains new abilities, but he knows that his companions have had their fill, so he suggests bringing food to the other goblins. They decide to follow his plan, and everyone thanks him for the food, as they start eating up, but Ru wonders why he's doing this, because he used to be a selfish person. That evening, we see everyone sleeping in the cave, when the system suddenly disturbs Ru, asking him if he wants to evolve. But he doesn't bother reading it, because he just wants to go back to sleep, so he selects yes, and doesn't think much of it. The next day, he notices that his body has changed, and he checks his reflection, realizing that he almost looks identical to his past self. We see that Kichi has also transformed, so he becomes surprised, and Mio thinks they look amazing. Gabu can't believe they've ranked up, because they're only 2 weeks old, but Kichi wants to test his strength, so he tells Ru to fight him. Rue accepts his challenge, and they start fighting in the woods. Kichi manages to land a hit, and he's about to end the fight, but Rue counters, knocking him down. He admits defeat, saying Rue is too strong for him, but Rue tells him he's stronger, saying he was only able to win because of his speed. They suddenly hear a wolf, thinking they're in trouble, so Rue tells Mio to prepare the crossbow they made. We see a wolf pack running in the field, eating the monsters they encounter, as Rue's group observes them, thinking it's time to test their new powers. Mio uses the crossbow to fire a poison bolt, and she hits the leader of the pack, so they scramble, as Rue and Kichi charge in, slaughtering them with ease. The leader gets back up, so Rue prepares to take him on, but he suddenly collapses because of his injury. Rue eats the leader, allowing him to gain new abilities, and he realizes that he has gained a leadership skill, so he decides to try it. He returns to the goblins, telling them to eat the wolves, but he tells them to catch the same amount of prey in the future. They know they aren't strong enough to do this, so they beg him to teach them how to hunt, and he agrees to this, saying he'll show them how it's done. So they start praising him, but he tells them to get up, saying they're all comrades, and they're moved by his words, so they decide to follow him, thinking he's amazing. A few days later, they realize that the humans have taken their own lives, so Rue holds a memorial for them, thinking they did it because they lost hope. Rue trains the goblins, and we learn that he's been eating monsters during the past few days, so he has acquired countless abilities. He sees a group approaching, thinking they're a threat, so he prepares to take them on, but Gabu stops him, telling him they're from the previous generation. Gabu welcomes them, and we see that they brought humans with them, planning to use them to create the next generation. But Rue is against this, so he approaches the leader named Ken, saying he wants to look after the humans. But Ken becomes upset, and he looks down on Rue, calling him a newborn, so everyone prepares to fight. But the girls named Sei and Sato arrive, telling them to settle down, because nobody wants to get involved in a civil war. Sato suggests having Ken and Rue fight, to determine who's going to be the leader of the village, but they aren't allowed to use weapons, and they agree to this, but Ken ends up losing in an instant. Rue explains that his strings don't count as weapons, because his body can produce them, and he tells everyone that he's the new leader of the village, but Ken's men aren't happy to hear this. He takes the humans to the storage area, telling them they're going to be safe there, because he ordered the goblins not to touch them. He promises to return them to a human village, but a girl named Rebellia asks him what he wants from them, so he tells them to share their knowledge. They reveal that they were part of a traveling business, but Ken's group attacked them, killing the men protecting them and taking them away. So they start crying, but Rue walks away, giving them space to grieve. 2 days later, Rue gives the humans food, but he realizes that they have already moved on, and he observes them as they eat, realizing that they're nothing like goblins because they don't evolve. But they have jobs which make each of them unique, and he already knows what they do for a living, revealing that Rebellia is a rookie warrior, so he thinks about letting her train with the goblins. We see the goblins training, but Ken's men are struggling, so Rue starts trash-talking them, but they become upset, so he beats them up, reminding them that he's the boss. One evening, Rue is about to go to sleep, but he senses danger, and we see Ken with his men, as they're about to force themselves on the humans. But Rue stops them, reminding them that they aren't allowed to touch the humans. Ken refuses to cooperate, so Rue knocks him down, and he tells the humans that everything's going to be okay. Mio and Kichi arrive, so Rue orders them to drag Ken and his men outside, and tell everyone to gather, because he wants them to see what he's about to do. We see everyone watching, as Rue tortures Ken, beating him to a bloody pulp, and Rue tells them this is the punishment for breaking the rules. The next day, we see that Ken's men are still tied down, but Ken is already dead, because he ended up bleeding to death. We see Rue and his friends fighting a trihorn, but they struggle to break its scales, so Rue restrains it, and he delivers the finishing blow. They start eating it, and Rue obtains new skills, so he decides to test one of them, realizing that he can land 3 blows with a single strike. He's about to go to sleep, but Rebellia joins him, and he thinks she still can't get over the incident, so he allows her to sleep beside him. But as he wakes up, he realizes that Mio also slept beside him, and his arms are in pain, because the girls are sleeping on them. The goblins continue their training, and we meet Rue's assistant Gobi, who has just evolved into a hobgoblin, and she's responsible for teaching goblins how to do chores. Mio is the captain of the ranged unit, and Kichi is looking after the armored fighters, while Sato is in charge of the light armored unit, but Sei is the only mage in the village, so she doesn't have anyone in her unit. Ru decides to leave the training to them, and he heads deeper into the woods, where he sees another Trihorn. He tries his spell on it, killing it in an instant, and he becomes confident in his abilities, so he wanders off alone. But he sees a trail of blood, and he recalls that Gabu warned him about a dangerous creature in the woods, which is known as the Red Bear. But he decides to follow the trail anyway, and it leads him to a dead Trihorn. He thinks the creature that killed it has incredible strength, because it was able to rip through the Trihorn's scales. The ground suddenly starts shaking as the Red Bear appears, threatening to kill him, so he thinks about running away, but he wants to obtain its skills, so he decides to fight it. Ru uses his magic, and he rushes to the bear, aiming for its head, but it blocks the spell with its hand, and Ru can't believe this, realizing that it has sharp instincts. He lunges at the bear, and he strikes its head with all his might, but he realizes that its skin is too tough, so he's forced to retreat. He covers it with his strings, but it manages to break free, and it breathes fire, burning everything in the area. But he suddenly disappears, so it starts looking for him, and we see him hiding behind a tree, using a spell to heal his wounds, as he notes that he needs to put everything on the line to defeat the bear. He charges in, as the bear breathes fire, but he protects himself with a shield, as he closes the distance, stabbing the bear's mouth. But it attacks him, sending him crashing against a tree, and he notes that he's severely injured. But he knows that the bear won't be able to breathe fire again, because his sword is stuck in its mouth. He knows that he's on the verge of death, thinking it's all over for him if he gets hit again, but he charges in, risking his life to land a decisive blow, but the bear attacks him, cutting off his arm. Ru manages to defeat the bear, but he's mortally wounded, and he eats its hand, allowing him to acquire its incredible strength. But he collapses because of his injuries, and at that moment, he receives a message from the system, telling him that he has reached the max level, so it asks him if he wants to evolve into an ogre. He chooses yes, so he regains consciousness, and he eats the bear's head, allowing him to learn more of its skills, but he notes that his knife has become smaller, realizing it's because he turned into an ogre. Ru returns to the village, but the goblins don't recognize him, seeing him as a threat. But he tells everyone he has returned, and Mio realizes who he is, so she kicks him, asking him where he's been, but she ends up hurting herself. She explains that she was worried about him, asking him what happened to his arm. So he tells everyone what happened, and they can't believe it, because they thought the red bear was the apex predator in the woods. So they think he's amazing, and they start asking him questions, but he's just glad that he was able to make it back alive. Mio and Rebellious start following him around, and the other girls are shocked when they see him, but eventually realize who he is. One of the girls named Emery checks his weapon, seeing how worn out it is, so she mentions she made a new knife using spirit stone, so Ru is happy about this, but Mio and Rebellia get jealous. He talks to the twins, and he's amazed at how adaptable they are, thinking they will make good wives, but Rebellia hits him for this. He checks on Spinel the alchemist next, realizing she made poison. She feels bad, but explains it was for self-defense, before she realized they could trust him, and Ru tells her not to worry about it, but he suddenly feels an intense killing intent. After that, we see that Ru can no longer take part in training the others, because the other goblins are critically injured by just a light punch, and Kichi's armor is almost destroyed. Kichi is demoralized after this, and goes out to train himself. We see Sato and Mio getting along, while Gobi spends her time mining for spirit stones. Ru hangs out with Sei, and he's glad he ate a slime, so he can still kind of use his arm. The next day, Gobi suddenly comes rushing to him with an injured spirit, so he quickly heals it. The spirit wakes up and introduces itself as Latana, thanking them for helping her. She explains she was attacked by humans, and Ru thinks it must have been for the gem on her head, which is said to be worth 1 billion gold. Latana begs for their help in getting rid of the humans, explaining how her master was a legendary magician and how she was created to watch over his secret treasure room, which contains all kinds of legendary items. Latana explains how her master hates humans, so he would rather give them all the items instead of letting the humans get them. Gobi wonders what they should do, so he decides to check it out. Rubellia seems to be concerned, but Ru says he has no plans to just kill the humans, and promises to try and persuade them. He goes with Gobi to a mining hole, and it seems to lead straight into the treasure room. He tells Gobi to hide, and he goes to find the adventurers himself. They are surprised to see an ogre, and he's suddenly attacked by an assassin, but he's able to stop it. He warns them they're trespassing, telling them to leave, but they refuse and charge at him. But he finds their attacks too simple, thinking they rely too much on levels and their job advancements. He is suddenly hit by a lightning spell, but the adventurers are shocked when they see it had no effect, and Rue starts to get pissed off, so he ends up eating all of them. He's able to learn all of their jobs, and he even finds a magic item bag, as well as a concealment ring. He suddenly eats them, and he gains the dimensional item box ability. After that, Latana takes them to her master Velvet, thanking them for their help, but she fades away, leaving her gem behind, and Rue eats it, gaining the golden rule ability. Thanks to his new item box ability, they're able to grab all of the treasure, but Rue feels bad about leaving the body, so he decides to cremate it, and it suddenly drops a glove. He tries it on, but it suddenly attaches onto him as he recognizes it as a legendary item, and he gains even more abilities. The others are amazed to see it, and it seems to feel as natural as his own hand. After that, he checks out all of the items they gathered, and everything is ridiculously strong. He ends up sharing it with the other hobgoblins, but he keeps the 2 other legendary items, and we learn they are insanely rare. Everyone is able to keep leveling up, and Rue continues to explore the forest. He eats a golden spider, as well as a crystal deer, gaining their abilities. He finds an enormous tree, and comes across a dryad, but we learn that they are said to tempt men, and use them as nutrition. The dryad comes up to him, and he struggles to resist her. He ends up giving in, but he gains the dryad's blessing, and she hopes for him to come back. He continues to fight more monsters, and gain their abilities, but when he goes back to the camp, all the girls start ignoring him. He's confused by this, and tries to ask what's going on, so he ends up with Spinel, who tells him that the girls are jealous, because they know he saw someone outside, pointing out the kiss marks on his neck, so he remembers the dryad. He wonders what he can do in his situation, but Spinel suddenly kisses him, mentioning how she also likes him, and Mio gets mad seeing this, but she suddenly clings onto him, saying she wants to kiss him as well, and the other girls all say they want the same thing. The next day, Rue reveals that his search ability has improved, and he senses a group approaching, so he goes out to meet them, realizing that the elves have arrived to pay him a visit. Their leader looks down on the goblins, calling them savages, and he offers to give them a reward if they defeat the humans threatening the woods. Gaba thinks it's a generous offer, but Rue refuses, and he mentions that he doesn't care what happens to the elves, knowing they aren't being sincere. They prepare to fight him, but he exudes his aura, and they're stunned by his overwhelming power. He knows he's surrounded by archers, so he threatens to kill the leader if he doesn't order them to stand down, and he fears for his life, so he obeys. Rue explains that he turned down the offer because he doesn't like their tone, but he will protect the woods with his life, since it's also his home. He displays his power by summoning countless spears, which surround the elves, so they decide to retreat. We see Rue hunting a gray slime, and he consumes its core, allowing him to obtain a skill called auto-replication. He decides to try it, using his blood to summon a tiny creature, and he realizes that he can use it to see what's happening. So he decides to put his blood on the girls' clothes, knowing it will help him protect them. A few days later, Rue senses the elves approaching, and their leader orders them to attack, but Rue unleashes a powerful roar, stunning the elves, and he uses his web to capture them. He asks the leader why he returned, so he admits that he wants to get revenge, but his companions mention that they tried to stop him. Rue explains that he's going to kill their leader, but he will give them a chance to live, saying they need to fight in mock battles against the goblins to determine who's going to survive. Moments later, we learn that 6 of them have been defeated, so he eats them, allowing him to obtain their skills. He tells the remaining elves that they're going to be kept as prisoners, and Gabu is excited, because most of them are women, so he wants to get lucky with them, but Rue tells him not to touch them. The leader starts begging for his life, but Rue executes him, and he ends up getting eaten. Kichi defeats a bear, and he reaches the max level, allowing him to evolve. He returns to the cave, and everyone can't believe that he ranked up, but Rue is happy that he was able to get stronger. We learn that Kichi evolved into a special variant because he has the blessings of the demigods, and he challenges Rue to fight him, thinking he should be able to match Rue's power. Rue accepts the challenge, and he struggles against Kichi, but he still manages to come out on top. He notes that he still has the edge in combat skills, but he acknowledges Kichi's strength, recognizing him as his rival. We see Rue entering the cave when a dark figure appears, and it gives him a gift, saying he should accept it, but he suddenly wakes up, thinking it was just a dream. We learn that Kichi inspired the other goblins to evolve, and Spinel tests their aptitude, revealing that one of them has the potential to be a mage. She introduces Rue to a hobgoblin named G, and she explains that he will make a good cleric. Rue notices that Sei has also evolved, and we learn that she has turned into a half-spell lord. But she wonders why she has strange markings on her body. They head outside, and Sei tests her powers by launching multiple fireballs, causing widespread destruction. She brags about her magic, telling Rue that the spell was basic, but he tells her he has seen enough, and we learn that she still hasn't reached her full potential, because she can still evolve into a spell lord. She receives new equipment to celebrate her milestone, and Rue realizes that the villagers are getting stronger. He watches the goblins as they train, and he realizes that his generation is performing better than the previous one, thinking it's because they were raised in a different environment. The next day, the goblins from the previous generation approach Rue, telling him that they've had enough, because they don't like the way he's running the village, so they want to leave. He bids them farewell, but they wonder why he isn't stopping them, so he explains that they're free to do whatever they want. He shows them a knife made of mithril, telling them to consider it as a parting gift, and he uses it to cut himself, before allowing them to have it. Rue sees an orc with a dead human, and he notes that the man has an interesting ability, so he kills the orc, and eats the man's body. He returns to the cave, where Spinel gives him a drink, and he realizes that it's beer, so he thanks her for creating it. Everyone gathers for a feast, as Rue tells them about the goblins that left the village, asking if anyone else wants to leave. But they remain silent, so he realizes that they're happy in the village, and they all drink together. After the feast, Rue uses his blood to create earrings, planning to use them to remotely communicate with the others. He makes the others wear it, and they're impressed that it's actually working. Gobi manages to defeat a Trihorn in one hit, but Rue notes that it's still alive. So he decides to use the ability he obtained from the human, which is known as the Monster Tamer, and the Trihorn gets back up, recognizing the goblins as its master. He realizes that the ability is useful, so he uses it to tame other creatures, thinking they could serve the people in his village. We see Rebellia fighting kobolds, and she's able to defeat 3 of them, as Rue notes that she's a competent fighter. She's about to eat, but she suddenly feels weird, realizing that she just unlocked a new job. She continues hunting monsters, and she's happy that she's making excellent progress. We learn that her new job is the Noir Soldier, and it allows her to level up faster, but she needs to keep consuming monsters to survive. She tells him that the humans have arrived in the woods, so he realizes that it's time for war. After some time, Rue senses a group of kobolds running to the cave, realizing that they're being chased by a horde of skeletons. So he orders his men to fight the skeletons, but they realize that their weapons are working, and he senses a powerful presence behind them, realizing that it's spawning the skeletons. Sato struggles against them, but she hits one of them with her scabbard, and it suddenly crumbles. So Rue realizes that they're weak against blunt attacks, and he orders everyone to smash the skeletons, so they start fighting with their fists. He orders them to stand back, saying he only needs 10 seconds to deal with the skeletons, and he blasts through them, allowing him to reach their leader, and he smashes it with his fist. He realizes that he was able to defeat all of them in 7 seconds, and he eats the leader, allowing him to acquire its abilities. The kobolds recognize Rue as their master, saying they owe him their lives, and we learn that they accidentally dug into a treasury, so its guardian awakened, and it started hunting them down. He reminds them that the goblins have killed kobolds, but they don't care, and they admit that they're weaker than goblins, saying he's free to do whatever he wants with them. So he decides to help them recover, and he realizes that his village is becoming quite an interesting group of people. Rue goes out hunting with Kichi, but they suddenly notice a suspicious group of humans. Rue decides to follow them, and they end up waiting beside a path. He uses his ability to eavesdrop, and learns that they are trying to kidnap the daughter of the elf chief, but also that one of the elves leaked the information. They wait until night, and the daughter of the chief passes through. The humans attack, killing the other elves, and they're about to capture the girl, but Rue reveals himself, and he easily deals with the men. He interrogates one of them, and learns that the humans plan on attacking them in around 20 days. The girl eventually wakes up, but she's shocked seeing Rue, and she wonders if he's trying to take advantage of her. He eventually calms her down, and she wonders why he didn't save her guards. She calls him mean, but Rue pushes her back, mentioning how they aren't involved in the issues between the humans and elves, and that there's a traitor among the elves. She cries hearing this, so Rue tells her to rest for the night, while Gabu is interested in her. The next day, Rue prepares to escort her back, and he asks about her wings, so she tells him it's because she's a high elf. They reach the elf village, and Rue detects a number of archers targeting him, all with mithril arrows. But the girl tells them to stand down, calling them her saviors. They meet with the chief, and Rue mentions he didn't save his daughter out of kindness, so the chief prepares a reward. Rue thinks it will be a good indication of how much he values his daughter, and the chief presents him with an ancient level item. Rue is happy about this, so he offers up information on the humans' movements, and they end up making a deal, and the chief gives them even more rare items. But the chief suddenly asks about his elite unit, wondering if Rue has seen them, but he pretends not to know anything. As they leave, the chief even gives them a gift of alcohol and medicines, causing Rue to promise to help them if they are ever in trouble. The next morning, Rue goes to wake Mio, but finds she has evolved into a Dhampir variant. Thanks to her blessing from the god of ice, she can now control large amounts of ice, and her eyes also have a bewitching effect that can make enemies attack each other. Gobi has also evolved into a half-earth lord, and she has the ability to manipulate terrain, as well as detecting ores and increase strength, while Sato has become a half-blood lord, who can manipulate blood and use it as a weapon. With the war approaching, Rue decides to make use of everyone that he can. He gives his communication device to the kobolds, but the elves refuse, since it's taboo for them to decorate their ears, so he spends the night convincing them. After that, he starts getting them all to start training, and he uses a new skill to summon a skeleton, but is surprised when it's black and comes with armor, because they're rarer than normal. The elves train against it, and Rue learns he can summon other kinds of undead, but they burn up when exposed to sunlight. We learn that there are now over 100 people in their group, and Rue notes that the kobolds are the weakest, so he takes them for extra training, and he uses the opportunity to catch more wolf familiars. At night, Rue finds that the halberd he used to fight the red bear has taken a new shape, and it seems Emery was able to improve it using the new materials they got from the elves. Rue is amazed by her work, and it seems she has also ranked up into an elemental smith. Kichi approaches Rue, and he confesses that he likes Gobi. Rue thinks it's obvious, but Kichi doesn't know how to tell her. Rue tells him he needs to just do it, because the sooner he gets an answer, the sooner he can move on. So Kichi calls her out at night, and confesses his feelings for her. The next day, we see that everything went well, as Kichi feels stronger than ever. We learn that Gobi was also asking Mio for advice, which is how Rue knew it would work out. The group goes hunting after their training, and Rue gains even more new abilities. He decides to try the exoskeleton ability, which gives him a suit of armor, and it has built-in healing and impact absorption. But he thinks it looks too extra, so he takes it off, but ends up naked, as he realizes the skill used up his clothes as the material for the armor. It seems the skill is able to register multiple forms, so he uses it with a different material to gain insect wings, but he struggles to get used to them. We see everyone continuing to improve, and Emery comes up with a new rapid-fire crossbow, while Spinel has created a new item from the black skeletons. They are visited by a group of elves sent by the chief, and they mention that the humans have begun their attack. They promise a great reward, and Rue agrees on the condition that they are able to operate freely, handing the elf a communication device to give to their chief. Rue starts to get excited, and he decides to gather everyone, announcing that they will become a mercenary group. Sei asks what their name will be, so Rue decides on Parabellum, revealing that it means prepare for war, and everyone starts to get excited. We see Rue leading his group early in the morning, showing them a human camp, but they realize that it's surrounded by a magical barrier. Sei knows that they can't get past it, so she suggests destroying it, and Rue orders everyone to get into position as he uses his gauntlet to fire a powerful blast, which shatters the barrier in one hit. So the humans start to panic, and Gobi strikes the ground, surrounding them with an earth wall as Sei uses her magic, setting the camp on fire. Rue summons countless skeletons, and he prepares to eliminate the humans, but they start fighting back, and we see a knight named Therese, who is revealed to be their commander. She sees Rue, realizing he's summoning the skeletons, so she orders her soldiers to take him down. One of her mages launches a barrage of projectiles, creating an opening for her to charge in, and he casts another spell, which allows her to move with ridiculous speed. Rue is impressed, realizing she's an excellent warrior, but as she closes the distance, he casually hits her and blows her away. He recognizes her talent, saying he wants her to join his group, but she refuses, telling him he will never take her alive. He orders his friends to capture the talented humans, saying they can kill the useless ones, so Mio uses her evil eye, which allows her to control the soldiers, and they start killing each other. Sato manipulates their blood, as she creates countless swords, using them to slaughter the humans. Therese's men are defeated, but she still fights on, stabbing Rue with everything she has, but she still can't pierce through his skin. Another mage uses all of his power to summon a dragon, telling her to escape, as Sei recognizes the spell, thinking Rue is going to die if he gets hit. Therese is ready to sacrifice herself, wanting to take Rue with her, but he pushes her away, saying he doesn't want her to die, so he creates a magical shield, which neutralizes the dragon. Sei is impressed, knowing Rue combined the elements to defend himself, and Therese can't believe how powerful he is. After the battle, Rue celebrates with the chief, who thanks him for dealing with the humans. He checks on the humans he captured, and we learn that he gave them the medicine he received from the elves, but Therese finds him suspicious, thinking he's going to use her for breeding. Rue gives them ear cuffs, and we learn that it prevents them from lying, so he's able to extract information from them. He decides to share this with the chief, because he promised to give Rue alcohol in exchange for the information. Rue uses the communication device, telling the chief that the humans are planning to attack him from different directions, because they had to scatter their soldiers to move through the forest. Rue prepares to ambush the humans, and he sees hundreds of soldiers marching through the woods, so he gives the signal, and his men block the path. So the soldiers panic, as boulders start falling from the cliff, killing hundreds of them in an instant. They fall into Rue's traps, and the goblins take them out, but their leader gathers the survivors, ordering them to build a wall, so they use the stones to shield themselves, as the mages use magic to fight back. Rue thinks the leader is impressive, realizing he needs to change his tactics, because they're struggling to defeat the humans. He orders Kichi to capture the leader, so he charges in with his men, as the mages try to stop them, but they're able to get close, and they start slaughtering the humans. Kichi clashes with the leader, who tries his best to fight back, but he ends up getting captured, and his army gets wiped out. We see the prisoners talking about Rue, thinking they're about to rot in jail, but we see that the leader has joined them, and he tells them to calm down. They recognize him, knowing his name is Crowback, and they know he's just a commoner, so they refuse to listen to him. Rue starts interrogating Crowback, asking him why the humans are trying to invade the forest. So he reveals that the princess of their kingdom is suffering from an incurable disease, and they're trying to look for the secret medicine of the elves, thinking it could heal the princess. But Rue thinks the humans are greedy, knowing they just want to heal her because she's engaged to an emperor. We cut to Gobi, as she discovers a hot spring, so Rue builds a bath for everyone, and they take the time to relax. The next day, Rue decides to train the prisoners, wanting to improve their combat ability, so he makes them participate in mock battles. We see Sei and Mio ordering the prisoners to fight, as Rue notes that they're capable commanders. Crowback fights against a skeleton, but he thinks it's too weak, and he challenges Rue to a fight. So he uses an ability to buff Crowback, saying he will need it to survive, and Rue completely destroys him, smashing him against the ground. Rue heals him, but Kichi also wants to fight him, so they start pummeling each other, and everyone's impressed by their fighting spirit. After that, Crowback reveals that he grew up surrounded by demi-humans, and he thinks Rue is amazing, because he was able to gather everyone in the village. Crowback wants to serve him, so he removes his collar, ordering him to train Rebellia, because he wants her to get stronger. Rue meets the chief, revealing that 3 of his prisoners are injured, and the chief decides to accept them. Rue asks him about the secret medicine, knowing it can cure all illnesses, and the chief reveals that he gave it to Rue earlier, telling him not to let the humans have it. He decides to try it, and he gains an ability called Medicine Blood, so he decides to use his blood on one of the prisoners, and he instantly recovers, as Rue notes that the skill is overpowered. The next evening, we see a human commander enjoying a cup of tea, when Rue's spear suddenly hits him, blowing a hole into his body. The spear activates, impaling the soldiers in the area, and Rue's friends appear, wiping out the remaining humans. The next day, Rue visits the chief, who explains that he wants to end the war, so he decides to send his elite unit to support Rue, thinking the final battle is about to take place. As they return to the village, Therese tells Rue that she wants to serve him, but she asks him to give the secret medicine to the humans, because she wants to save the princess. So he thinks about it, thinking he can get the kingdom in his debt, but he considers the religious system, knowing there are 5 great gods in the world, which grant people extraordinary powers. We learn that he has the blessings of the god of demise and origin, so he thinks there's going to be a religious conflict if he hands over the medicine. But he considers what could happen, and he tells Therese that he will think about it. Rue's group approaches the enemy's base, but he knows they're outnumbered, so he thinks they shouldn't fight the humans head-on. We learn that he scouted the area ahead of time, and he heard the humans talking about the Rugalorden. He asked Crowback and Therese about this, so they told him that the Rugalorden is composed of 8 heroic warriors, who are all blessed by the gods, and they have the ability to strengthen their allies. But Rue looks forward to fighting them, because he wants to eat them. He summons his skeletons, but Mio asks him why he's doing this, reminding him that it's almost dawn. But he explains that he has a plan, telling his friends to secure the perimeter, because he's going to attack the base by himself. His skeletons charge in, and the humans struggle to deal with them, but the sun rises, and they start to disappear. But we learn that Rue covered them in slime, which protects them from sunlight. Rue joins the fight, ordering the skeletons to help his friends, and he gathers the water and blood in the area, unleashing a powerful wave that takes out all the soldiers in an instant. But a boy named Philip approaches Rue. He knows that Philip is one of the Rugalorden, and he's known as the Bone Bug, but he reveals that he doesn't like the name because it makes him sound like an insect. He shows Rue his eyes, and Rue realizes that he received the blessing from the god of demonic insects, thinking his aura is insane. He reveals that he used his abilities to create bugs, and he releases them as the soldiers start moving. Rue notes that they aren't zombies because the sun isn't affecting them, so he believes they're being controlled by parasites. Philip explains that the members of the Rugalorden are different from heroes because they aren't as powerful, but they have the ability to strengthen their allies. He uses his ability, which transforms the soldiers into insects, and they start attacking Rue, but he slices through them. So Philip recognizes his skills and decides to control the insects, allowing them to launch coordinated attacks. Rue struggles against them, and Philip notes that he's getting hit, but the insects can't kill him because of his regeneration. So he decides to summon his favorite pet as a massive centipede appears, and it bites Rue, as Philip reveals that his pet is classified as a natural disaster. He explains that its venom can paralyze its targets, and Rue loses consciousness, so the centipede puts him down, as Philip orders it to finish its mission. So the centipede leaves, but he realizes that Rue is missing, and he launches a surprise attack, which Philip barely manages to avoid. He wonders how Rue was able to survive, but he refuses to reveal his secret, and Philip thinks he used a fake corpse. He's about to reveal his first secret weapon, and he starts bragging about how powerful he is, but Rue suddenly attacks him, shattering his vial. He thinks Rue is being rude, and tentacles suddenly appear from his body as he prepares to use his second secret weapon. He consumes the corpses, allowing him to create a suit of armor, and he starts attacking, but Rue counters and blows him away. He starts flying, as he mentions that Rue is full of surprises, wondering how he can be so powerful without an epic awakening. So Rue wonders what he means, but he refuses to say anything. Rue reveals that he also has an insect outfit, and he summons his exoskeleton, saying they're now evenly matched. He starts flying, as Philip tries to stop him, but he manages to close the distance, and he lands a devastating blow, which sends Philip crashing to the ground. We see that his friends have defeated the enemy soldiers, but Mio gets a bad feeling and she flies off. Philip says he's had enough and he abandons his armor as he starts running away. Rue chases after him, but the armor gets in the way, so he strikes it down, but realizes that Philip has gotten away. Mio is glad to see that he's okay, and he reveals that he sent a replicant with stealth abilities to search for the human leader. He sees the prince of the kingdom, telling him he wants to put an end to the war, so he gives the secret medicine to the prince, telling him to use it to save the princess. The soldiers ask him what they should do next, and he tells them to send a messenger, because they've already acquired the secret medicine. We return to Rue, and we learn that he didn't want to kill the prince, because the kingdom will retaliate if that happens. Gobi destroys a cliff, creating a wall around the forest, and they start looking after their wounded soldiers. We see two humans trying to return to their base, but they see Rue, so they panic, but he spares them, telling them the war is over. Rue has a funeral for his fallen comrades, as he notes that they lost 30 because of the war. We learn that the corpses need to be burned, because they could end up turning into zombies or ghosts, and his friends start crying, as Rue thinks about doing whatever it takes for them to survive. We see that a number of the goblins evolved after the battle. Chi has become a half-Saint Lord thanks to healing all the injured, and he even gained a shield ability that's strong enough to withstand some of Rue's punches. Gofu has become a ghoul, because she always ate the zombies that Rue created, but Rue is a little scared of her. He tries not to think about her, but he runs into Mei, who has become a Demeki, with eyes all over her body, which give her the remote viewing ability, so she will be good for gathering intel. Rue checks on the kobolds, and he sees that their leader has also evolved. He reveals he has gained a true name, calling himself Akita, as we learn that true names are special names that individuals are granted at a certain level. But if an enemy learns it, they can cast certain spells like curses on you, so it's important to keep it a secret, but Akita reveals it to Rue as a sign of his loyalty. After that, Rue wonders what to do with the prisoners. He tells them they're free to leave, or they can stay as provisional members, but there are a few who are unhappy being treated like rookies, since they're much stronger than the other goblins. Rue tells them to leave if they have a problem, but the leader Zai suggests fighting for control of the group. Rue decides to humor them, so he tells them to attack him together. They activate their orb weapons, as we learn that they give their users a boost in power, but Rue still easily blows them away. Chi heals their wounds, but Rue suddenly gets hit by a sneak attack, and he gets sent flying. The Gorilla Man calls himself the boss, but Rue suddenly punches him back, and completely destroys him. Rue looks for the half-Dampier, but sees him flirting with Mio, so he gives him an extra special beating. Mio ends up stopping him, and he gives the man some of his blood to heal him. There are others who thank Rue for saving them from slavery, and they willingly join as provisional members. The half-Dampier approaches them again, but he's fallen in love with Rue after tasting his blood. However, Rue isn't into it, so he gives him another beating, but they end up with 50 new provisional members. Rue introduces Emery to some dwarves, but they seem to be a bit rude, so Emery doesn't like them, but Rue asks her to get along, since dwarves are said to be the best craftsmen, and they give him a new warhammer. Rue goes on a walk in the woods, and he thinks about how much things have changed, but the Dryad suddenly appears, asking if he wants to have some fun. He tries to turn her down, but she has her way with him, and when he gets back to the base, the girls get mad seeing all the kiss marks on his face. After that, Rue starts to grow crops, as we learn that he went to see the Dryad to get magical seeds from her, which grow faster and are more nutritious. Some of the provisional members decide to go home, and we see that the noble prisoners have also been released, but they've all been brainwashed by Mio, so they've basically become spies, and Rue learns that the human army has started to completely withdraw. The elf chief is glad that it's over, and he invites Rue to join their banquet. Rue does some crafting with his skeleton bones, and he ends up creating a skeleton centipede. He shows it to the girls, and they think it's creepy, but he explains they can use it as a vehicle, and he plans to take them back to their home. They wonder if they are being kicked out, but he mentions he wants to fulfill his promise to take them home and give them a chance to choose if they want to stay. There's a feast to officially welcome the new members, and Zai thinks the centipede will scare people in the town. The Dampier Danny notes that the Empire and the Kingdom have disdain for demi-humans, so he will need a guarantor from a noble family to get in, but Zai offers to help him out. The next day, before they head off, Ruth splits everyone into groups, telling them to gather more information about the outside world, but reminds them that no one is allowed to die. They all head off, and Ruth thinks things will be quiet without everyone around, but he looks forward to finding even stronger prey out in the world as they head towards the city of Trient. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.